10 Apaches came seeking shelter on his land. Ending the rancher's years of solitude, the rifle barrel caught the morning sun as Jake Harrison tracked the dust cloud rising from the southern ridge. 10 riders moving fast across his land. His hand tightened on the Winchester as he counted them through the scope. Apache warriors, their horses lathered with sweat, pushing hard toward his ranch house. Behind them, another dust cloud. Bigger. Cavalry was hunting them. Jake had spent 12 years alone on this spread, avoiding people, avoiding trouble, avoiding everything that reminded him of the war. The ranch sat in a narrow valley where 3 states met, a place the maps forgot and the law ignored. He liked it that way. Now trouble was riding straight for his front door, and there was nowhere to hide. The Apaches reached his fence line within minutes. Their leader raised his hand, and the group slowed. Jake could see them clearly now. Young men mostly, except for the leader who carried himself with the bearing of a warrior who had seen too many battles. Blood-stained 2 of the riders. They were hurt, desperate, and dangerous. Jake stepped onto his porch, rifle held low but ready. The leader rode forward alone, stopping 20 feet from the house. His face was hard as canyon rock, eyes measuring Jake with the same calculation Jake was using on him. The Apache spoke first, his English rough but clear. "We need water. We need rest. The bluecoats are 1 hour behind us." Jake's jaw clenched. Helping them meant bringing the cavalry down on his ranch. Refusing them meant watching 10 men die on his land. Either way, his solitude was finished. "How many soldiers?" Jake asked. 40. Maybe more. They had been chasing us for 3 days. The distant thunder of hooves was already audible. Jake made his decision in the space of a heartbeat. He pointed to the barn. "Get your horses inside. There's a root cellar beneath the tack room. The door is hidden under the hay bales. You have 5 minutes." The Apache leader's eyes narrowed. "Why would you help us?" "Because I've been hunted too," Jake said. "Now move before I change my mind." The warriors scattered, leading their horses toward the barn. Jake watched them go, then turned his attention to the approaching cavalry. He had just bet his life and his freedom on a group of strangers. The loneliness he had cultivated for 12 years was about to be shattered by violence, and there was no turning back. He walked inside his house and pulled a second rifle from the rack. If the soldiers searched his property, things were going to get bloody. His hands were steady as he loaded both weapons. Whatever came next, Jake Harrison was done running from his past. The first part of the cavalry appeared over the ridge, their guidons snapping in the wind. Jake counted 30 riders in the vanguard, with more behind. He stepped back onto his porch and sat in his rocking chair, rifle across his lap, waiting for the storm to break over his forgotten valley. Part 2, Captain Frank Morris led the cavalry column into Jake's yard with the confidence of a man who had never lost a hunt. His blue uniform was dark with sweat and dust. His face burned red from days under the Arizona sun. He raised his fist, and 40 soldiers reined in their horses, surrounding the ranch house in a practiced maneuver that spoke of military precision. Jake remained seated, rocking slowly, his face showing nothing. Morris dismounted and walked forward, his hand resting on his pistol. 2 lieutenants flanked him, their eyes scanning the property. "You the owner here?" Morris demanded. "I am. I'm Captain Morris, United States Cavalry. We're pursuing a band of hostile Apaches. 10 riders. They came this way. Have you seen them?" Jake let the silence stretch. He took a slow draw from his pipe, then exhaled. "Saw dust on the southern ridge about an hour ago. Could have been anyone." Morris's eyes hardened. "These aren't just anyone. They're renegades. They killed a family near Fort Bowie 3 days ago. Women and children. We're going to hang every one of them." Jake's expression didn't change, but his mind was racing. The Apache leader hadn't mentioned any massacre. Either Morris was lying, or Jake had just sheltered murderers. Either way, he was committed. "Haven't seen anyone," Jake said. "Just dust." Morris stepped closer. "You live out here alone? 12 years? That's a long time to avoid people. What are you hiding from?" Jake met his eyes. "Same thing everyone's hiding from. The past." Morris smiled without warmth. "I'm going to search your property. If I find those Apaches here, I'll hang you right alongside them for harboring fugitives." Jake stood slowly, the rifle hanging loose in his hand. "You have a warrant to search private property, Captain?" "I have 40 armed men. That's all the warrant I need out here." The soldiers began to spread out. Jake's mind calculated angles and distances. If they found the cellar, he could maybe drop 3 or 4 soldiers before they cut him down. Not good odds, but he had survived worse during the war. A young private named Cole approached the barn. Jake's pulse quickened. The kid was heading straight for the tack room. In seconds, he would find the displaced hay bales, Then fate intervened in the form of a rattlesnake. The serpent, disturbed by the commotion, slithered from under the barn's foundation directly into the path of Cole's horse. The animal reared, throwing the private hard onto the packed earth. The snake struck twice, sinking fangs into the horse's leg. The wounded animal screamed and bolted, scattering soldiers as it ran wild through the yard. Morris cursed and ordered 2 men to retrieve the horse and check on Cole. The private was conscious but badly shaken. The search ground to a halt as soldiers dealt with the chaos. Jake used the distraction. He walked to the well and drew water, carrying it to the injured private. "Your boy hit his head pretty good. Needs rest, not riding." Morris glared at him. "We don't have time for rest. Those Apaches could be miles from here by now." "Or they could be dead," Jake said. "This land kills more men than bullets do. Maybe your hostiles rode into a canyon and got themselves trapped." "Maybe they're already buzzard food." Morris studied him for a long moment. Jake could see the calculation behind the captain's eyes. The sun was setting. His men were exhausted. The horses were spent. And they had no concrete evidence the Apaches had come this direction. "We'll make camp here tonight," Morris announced. "Post guards on all approaches. At first light, we continue the search." Jake's stomach sank. Having 40 soldiers camped on his property overnight was the worst possible outcome. The Apaches were trapped in his cellar with no food and limited water. They would have to stay silent and still for the next 12 hours while soldiers walked above them. The cavalry began setting up camp. Jake retreated to his house, his mind working through scenarios. He needed to get food and water to the Apaches without being seen. He needed to keep the soldiers away from the barn, and he needed a plan for tomorrow when Morris resumed his search with fresh eyes. As darkness fell, Jake made his move. He carried a bucket to the well, making sure the guards saw him. Then he walked to the barn, calling out that he needed to check on his own horses. The guards were relaxed now, focused more on their own discomfort than on watching an old rancher. Inside the barn, Jake moved quickly. He shifted the hay bales and knocked 3 times on the cellar door. It opened a crack, and the Apache leader's eyes gleamed in the darkness. "The soldiers are camping tonight," Jake whispered. "Stay quiet. I'll get you out tomorrow." "Why are you doing this?" the Apache asked again. Jake thought about the question. Why was he risking everything for strangers? Maybe because he was tired of being alone. Maybe because he saw something in their desperate flight that reminded him of his own running. Maybe because choosing sides felt better than hiding. "'Cause it's the right thing," Jake said finally. He passed down a canteen and some dried meat. "Whatever Morris says you did, you'll get a fair trial if I can help it. But not if he catches you here." The Apache leader took the supplies. "My name is Swift Fox. These men are my brothers." The captain lies. "We killed no family. We were hunting deer when his soldiers attacked our camp. We ran." Jake wanted to believe him, but the war had taught him that everyone lied when their life was on the line. "Fair trial," he repeated. "That's all I can promise." He closed the cellar and rearranged the hay. Outside, the cavalry camp was settling in for the night. Fires burned and men talked in low voices. Jake returned to his house, aware that tomorrow would bring a reckoning. He sat by his window watching the guards, planning his next move. The loneliness was gone now, replaced by something more dangerous. Purpose. And in this forgotten valley where 3 states met and the law was whatever a man could enforce with a gun, purpose was the most deadly thing of all. Part 3 dawn broke cold over the valley, painting the eastern ridge in shades of gold and crimson. Jake had not slept. He sat on his porch, coffee in hand, watching the cavalry camp stir to life. Morris emerged from his tent, barking orders, his determination to find the Apaches clearly undiminished by a night's rest. Jake's plan was simple but dangerous. He needed to convince Morris to move on, to believe the Apaches had escaped the valley entirely. The question was, how to do that without raising more suspicion. Morris approached the porch, his face set in hard lines. "My men will search every building, every shed, every hole on this property. If those Apaches are here, I will find them." "Captain," Jake said carefully, "I've been thinking about those tracks you were following. The way the dust was moving yesterday, those riders were heading east, not stopping here. There's a canyon pass about 10 miles out that leads into New Mexico territory. If I were running from the cavalry, that's where I would go. Cross the state line, lose myself in the Badlands." Morris considered this. "You seem awfully helpful all of a sudden." "I seem practical. You've got 40 men camped on my land, eating my grass, drinking my water. The sooner you find your hostiles or give up the chase, the sooner I get my solitude back." A shout from near the barn interrupted them. Lieutenant Greg Hammond was waving urgently. Jake's blood ran cold. They had found something. Morris and Jake both ran to the barn. Hammond was pointing at the ground near the tack room entrance. Fresh hoof marks in the dirt, partially covered but still visible, and drops of blood on the wooden planks. "These marks are fresh, Captain," Hammond said. "Someone was here recently." And they were bleeding. Morris drew his pistol. "Spread out. Search every inch of this barn. Tear it apart if you have to." Soldiers poured into the structure. Jake stood frozen, his mind calculating. In minutes they would find the cellar. He had one choice left: start shooting and hope to create enough chaos for the Apaches to escape. It was a suicide plan, but it was all he had. Then Swift Fox made the decision for him. The cellar door burst open, and 10 Apache warriors exploded into the barn, weapons drawn. The surprise was total. Swift Fox fired first, his rifle shot dropping the nearest soldier. His brothers followed, their war cries filling the barn with terrifying sound. Jake dove for cover as the barn erupted in gunfire. Soldiers scrambled for their weapons, caught completely off guard. The Apaches fought like cornered wolves, desperate and lethal. 2 more soldiers fell in the first seconds of combat. Morris was shouting orders, trying to organize his scattered men. Jake pulled his rifle and faced an impossible choice: help the cavalry or help the Apaches. 12 years of solitude had left him unprepared for this moment of decision. An Apache warrior named Running Deer went down, shot through the shoulder. A soldier moved in to finish him. Jake made his choice. He fired once, and the soldier crumpled. There was no going back now. Morris saw the shot. His eyes found Jake across the chaos. "Traitor!" he screamed. "Kill them all!" The battle intensified. The Apaches were outnumbered, but fighting in close quarters where their skill with knife and hatchet gave them an advantage. Swift Fox moved through the barn like a vengeful spirit, his blade finding soldiers with terrible efficiency. But numbers were beginning to tell. 3 Apaches were down, and the warriors were being pushed toward the back wall. Jake fired methodically, taking down soldiers who tried to flank the Apaches. He had betrayed his own people, crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. But watching Swift Fox and his brothers fight with such courage, he felt something he had not experienced in 12 years. He felt alive. A bullet creased his ribs, spinning him around. He stumbled but kept firing. The barn was thick with gunsmoke now, making it hard to see. Bodies littered the floor, both cavalry and Apache. The violence was horrific, intimate, and utterly brutal. Then Morris did something unexpected. He pulled a stick of dynamite from his saddlebag. "Everyone out," he shouted to his soldiers. "We'll blow them to hell." The cavalry began retreating from the barn. Swift Fox saw the danger immediately. "Run!" he yelled to his brothers. "Out the back!" The Apaches scattered, bursting through the barn's rear wall in a desperate escape. Jake followed, blood streaming from his side. Behind them, Morris lit the fuse and threw the dynamite into the barn. The explosion was deafening. The barn disintegrated in a ball of flame and shrapnel. The blast wave threw Jake forward, slamming him into the dirt. His ears rang and smoke filled his lungs. Around him, the Apaches were regrouping, dragging their wounded toward the horses they had hidden in a nearby gully. Swift Fox grabbed Jake's arm. "Can you ride?" Jake nodded, though his vision was swimming. Swift Fox pulled him toward the horses. Behind them, Morris was rallying his remaining soldiers. The captain's face was twisted with fury, blood running from a cut on his forehead. "After them!" he roared. "I want them all dead." The chase was on. 10 Apaches and 1 white rancher against 30 cavalry soldiers across the unforgiving Arizona Badlands. Jake hauled himself onto a horse, pain screaming through his injured ribs. Swift Fox led the group east, toward the canyon pass Jake had mentioned earlier. It was their only chance. The cavalry came hard behind them, firing as they rode. Bullets kicked up dirt around the fleeing riders. 1 Apache horse went down, throwing its rider. The warrior tried to rise, but was immediately gunned down by pursuing soldiers. Swift Fox did not slow. He could not afford to. They rode for 2 hours, pushing the horses to their limits. The canyon pass loomed ahead, a narrow gap between towering red rock walls. It was defensible ground, but it was also a potential trap. If Morris got men above them on the canyon rim, they would be slaughtered like fish in a barrel. Swift Fox made a quick decision. He split his group. 4 Apaches would ride through the canyon as decoys. The rest would take a harder route, climbing the rocky slopes to the north and circling back to ambush the cavalry from behind. Jake rode with Swift Fox's group, his horse scrambling up a steep incline that seemed impossible to climb. But the Apache ponies were bred for this terrain, and they made it to the top just as Morris led his cavalry into the canyon below. The trap was set. Swift Fox raised his hand, then brought it down in a swift cutting motion. The Apaches opened fire from above, pouring bullets down onto the trapped soldiers. Morris realized too late what had happened. He tried to retreat, but the canyon was narrow, and his horses panicked in the confined space. The slaughter was methodical and merciless. The Apaches had the high ground, and they used it with devastating effect. Soldiers fell from their horses, and the animals trampled them in their terror. Morris took a bullet through the leg and fell, screaming orders that no one could follow. Jake fired until his rifle was empty, then watched as the remaining cavalry broke and ran, leaving their dead and wounded behind. Swift Fox's warriors whooped in triumph, but the victory felt hollow to Jake. He had just helped massacre United States soldiers. He was now a wanted man, an outlaw, a traitor to his people. Swift Fox climbed down from the ridge and approached the wounded Morris. The captain glared up at him with pure hatred. "You're all dead men. The army will hunt you to the ends of the earth." Swift Fox knelt beside him. "Tell your army that we want only peace. Tell them to leave our lands and our people alone. Tell them this killing can stop if they choose to stop it." Morris spat blood. "The only peace you'll get is death." Swift Fox stood and turned away. He gave orders to his men to take what weapons and supplies they could from the fallen soldiers, then leave. They would ride into New Mexico, into the wild country where the cavalry rarely ventured. They would find Swift Fox's tribe and warn them that more soldiers would come. Jake followed them, his old life burning behind him like the barn that Morris had destroyed. He was one of them now, bound by blood and battle to these Apache warriors who had sought shelter on his land and ended his years of solitude forever. Part 4. The group rode hard through the night, putting distance between themselves and the canyon massacre. Jake's wound had stopped bleeding, but infection was a real danger in this heat. Swift Fox led them to a hidden spring in the New Mexico Badlands, a place known only to his people, where water bubbled up from ancient rocks and cottonwood trees provided shade. They made camp as the moon rose, a thin crescent that gave little light. The surviving Apaches numbered 7 now, including Swift Fox. 3 had died in the barn, 1 during the chase, and Running Deer's shoulder wound was festering badly. Jake cleaned his own injury with whiskey from his saddlebag, biting down on leather to keep from screaming as the alcohol burned through torn flesh. Swift Fox sat beside him when he finished. The Apache leader's face was grim in the firelight. "You have lost everything to help us. Your home, your peace, the respect of your people. Why?" Jake stared into the flames. "I told you it was the right thing." "That is not enough reason for what you have done." Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he began to talk, words spilling out that he had kept locked inside for 12 years. "I was a soldier once. During the war, I led a company of men through Georgia. We were ordered to burn farms, destroy crops, break the South's will to fight. I followed those orders. I watched families starve. I watched children cry as we torched their homes. I told myself it was necessary, that it was war, that I was just following orders." He paused, his hands shaking slightly. "There was one farm, a woman and her 3 daughters. They begged us to leave them enough food to survive the winter. My commanding officer laughed and ordered everything burned. I should have stopped it. I should have stood up, but I did not. I followed orders. That winter, all 4 of them died of starvation." Swift Fox listened without judgment. Jake continued. "After the war ended, I could not go home, could not face myself. So I came out here, to this empty land, and tried to forget, tried to convince myself that hiding from people was the same as redemption. When you rode onto my property, desperate and hunted, I saw that woman and her daughters again. I saw another chance to do the right thing. Maybe the only chance I will ever get." Swift Fox nodded slowly. "We all carry ghosts. The difference is whether we let them destroy us or teach us." He stood and called out orders in Apache to his men. They began breaking camp immediately. "Where are we going?" Jake asked. "To my village. It is 3 days north. You will be safe there, and our medicine woman can treat your wound properly. And after that?" Swift Fox met his eyes. "After that, you must decide. You can ride away, try to disappear into Mexico or California, live the rest of your life running. Or you can stay with us and fight for something worth fighting for." They rode out within the hour. The journey north was brutal. The land was a maze of arroyos and mesas, baked hard by the sun and scoured by wind. They saw no other travelers, which was both blessing and danger. Isolation meant safety from the cavalry, but it also meant no help if they encountered trouble. On the second day, they found trouble. A group of Mexican bandits, 15 strong, blocked their path at a narrow pass. The leader, A scarred man named Valdez grinned when he saw Swift Fox's small group. Apaches and a white man. What an interesting combination. Give us your horses and weapons and we might let you live. Swift Fox replied in Spanish, too fast for Jake to follow. Whatever he said made Valdez laugh. You think 7 wounded men can fight 15? You are welcome to try. The Apaches dismounted slowly, spreading out. Jake recognized the tactic. They were creating overlapping fields of fire, using the terrain to their advantage. He took position behind a boulder, his rifle ready. The bandits charged, confident in their superior numbers. They learned too late that numbers meant nothing against men who had already survived hell. The Apaches fought with the precision of warriors who had been training since childhood. Swift Fox's rifle barked 3 times, dropping 3 bandits in quick succession. His brothers matched his accuracy. Jake fired methodically, his hand steady despite the pain in his ribs. He had been a good soldier once, and those skills had not left him. The bandits broke after losing 8 men in the first minute of combat. Valdez tried to rally them, but a bullet from Running Deer, fired despite his wounded shoulder, took the bandit leader in the chest. The survivors scattered into the desert, leaving their dead behind. Swift Fox approached the fallen Valdez. The bandit was still alive, blood bubbling from his lips. You fight well for wounded men, he gasped. Who are you? We are the ones the world wants dead, Swift Fox said. We are the ones who refuse to die. Valdez laughed, a wet, choking sound. Then his eyes went empty. Swift Fox took the bandits' horses and weapons. They would need them for what was coming, because he knew that Morris, if he had survived, would report what happened. The army would send more soldiers, better equipped and more determined. The hunt would intensify. They reached Swift Fox's village on the evening of the 3rd day. It was hidden in a valley so remote that few white men knew it existed. About 60 people lived there, mostly women, children, and elders. The warriors had been away, raiding for supplies to survive the winter. When they saw Swift Fox returning with a white man, the village erupted in alarm. An old woman, her face lined with age but her eyes sharp as obsidian, approached. She spoke rapidly to Swift Fox in Apache, gesturing at Jake. Swift Fox responded calmly, his voice carrying authority. The old woman studied Jake for a long moment, then nodded. This is Singing Bird, Swift Fox told Jake. She is our medicine woman, and the grandmother of our people. She will treat your wound. She wants to know if you come as friend or spy. Jake met the old woman's eyes. Tell her I come as someone who is tired of running. Tell her I come seeking redemption, Swift Fox translated. Singing Bird's expression softened slightly. She gestured for Jake to follow her to a shelter where she kept her medicines. Inside, she cleaned his wound with herbs that stung worse than the whiskey had, then packed it with a poultice that smelled of earth and sage. As she worked, she spoke to Swift Fox, who translated. She says your wound will heal, but you carry deeper injuries. Wounds of the spirit. Those take longer to heal, and no medicine can cure them except time and purpose. Jake nodded. The old woman was right. He had been wounded for 12 years, and only in the past few days had he started to feel like those wounds might close. Fighting alongside Swift Fox and his warriors had given him something he thought he had lost forever. A reason to wake up in the morning. A reason to believe he could be more than a ghost haunting an empty ranch. That night, the village held a council. Swift Fox spoke of the battles they had fought, the soldiers they had killed, the rancher who had risked everything to help them. The elders listened gravely. They knew what this meant. The army would come for them now. They would have to move again, find another hiding place, continue the endless cycle of running and fighting. An elder named Grey Wolf stood and spoke. Swift Fox translated for Jake. He says, we have run long enough. He says it is time to make a stand, to fight for our right to exist in the land of our ancestors, to fight until they kill us all or leave us in peace. Other voices joined in, some agreeing, some counseling caution. The debate raged for hours. Finally, Swift Fox raised his hand for silence. He spoke with passion, his words ringing through the night air. When he finished, the council voted. They would stay and fight. Jake knew what that decision meant. The cavalry would come in force. This small village of 60 people would face hundreds of soldiers. It was suicide. But looking at the faces around the council fire, he saw no fear, only determination. These people had been pushed to the edge of extinction, and they decided that dying on their feet was better than living on their knees. Swift Fox approached Jake after the council ended. You do not have to stay for this. You can ride away tonight. Disappear into Mexico. Build a new life. Jake shook his head. I have run enough. If you are making a stand, I will stand with you. Swift Fox gripped his shoulder. Then you are Apache now. You are one of us. And we will face what comes together. Part 5. The cavalry arrived 6 days later, 200 soldiers strong, led by a colonel named Henry Blake, who had built his reputation crushing native resistance across the frontier. They came at dawn, a blue wave rolling across the valley floor, their cannons gleaming in the early light. It was an overwhelming force, designed to intimidate and destroy. But the Apaches had used those 6 days well. Under Swift Fox's leadership, they had prepared the valley like a fortress. Trenches had been dug, rifle pits carved into the hillsides. Every boulder, every tree, every fold in the earth had been turned into a defensive position. The 60 villagers had been joined by 30 more warriors who had heard of the coming battle and ridden in to fight. Still, 90 people against 200 trained soldiers and artillery was a battle that could only end one way. Jake had been given command of the western approach, a dozen warriors under his leadership. It felt strange to be leading men again after 12 years of solitude, but the skills came back like muscle memory. He positioned his fighters carefully, creating kill zones and fallback positions. If they were going to die, they would make the cavalry pay for every inch of ground. Colonel Blake stopped his column out of rifle range and sent a rider forward with a white flag. Swift Fox met him in the center of the valley, Jake at his side. The messenger was a young lieutenant named Danny Carter, barely old enough to shave, his eyes wide with nervousness. "Colonel Blake offers terms," Carter said, his voice cracking slightly. "Surrender now, and the women and children will be spared. The warriors will face trial for the murder of Captain Morris and his men. Refuse, and he will shell this village into dust." Swift Fox smiled without warmth. "Tell your colonel we do not murder. We defend. Tell him Captain Morris hunted us without cause, lied about crimes we did not commit, and died when we fought back. Tell him we want only to be left in peace, to live on our ancestral lands without interference." Carter shifted uncomfortably. "The colonel does not negotiate with hostiles. These are his only terms." "You have 1 hour to decide. Tell him we have already decided," Swift Fox said. "We will not surrender. If he wants this valley, he will have to take it over our bodies." Carter rode back to Blake's lines. Jake watched him go, his stomach tight with anticipation. "This is it," he said quietly. "No turning back now." Swift Fox nodded. "We were born for this moment. Our ancestors are watching. We will make them proud." They returned to their positions. The hour passed in tense silence. Then Colonel Blake gave the order, and the cannons opened fire. The shells screamed through the air, exploding among the village shelters. Earth and debris fountained skyward. The noise was apocalyptic, designed to break the defenders' will before the infantry even advanced. But the Apaches had anticipated this. The women and children were safe in caves deeper in the valley, beyond the range of the artillery. The warriors crouched in their trenches and rifle pits, waiting for the barrage to end and the real battle to begin. After 30 minutes of shelling, Blake ordered the advance. Infantry moved forward in organized lines, their rifles ready. They expected to find a shattered, demoralized enemy. Instead, they walked into a carefully prepared ambush. The Apaches held their fire until the soldiers were well within range. Then Swift Fox gave the signal. The valley erupted in gunfire. Soldiers fell in waves, cut down by accurate shooting from concealed positions. The neat infantry lines dissolved into chaos as men scrambled for cover that did not exist. Jake fired until his rifle barrel was too hot to touch, then grabbed another weapon. His position accounted for 15 soldiers in the first 5 minutes. The warriors under his command fought with desperate courage, knowing this was their final stand. One of them, a young man named Quickblade, took a bullet through the throat and died without making a sound. Jake dragged the body back and kept firing. Blake responded by concentrating his artillery on Jake's position. Shells tore through the hillside, shredding trees and sending boulders tumbling. 2 more of Jake's warriors died in the bombardment. He ordered to fall back to the secondary positions, and they retreated under fire, carrying their wounded. The battle raged for 3 hours. The cavalry pushed forward, taking casualties but gaining ground through sheer weight of numbers. The Apaches fought brilliantly, using every trick of terrain and tactics, but they could not hold against such overwhelming force. Swift Fox's position on the eastern ridge held longest, his warriors inflicting terrible losses on the attacking soldiers, but even they were eventually forced to retreat. By noon, the cavalry had pushed into the village itself. Blake's soldiers moved house to house, burning everything, destroying 12 years of Apache effort to build a life in this hidden valley. Jake and the surviving defenders fell back to the caves where the women and children were sheltered. They prepared for a final stand at the cave mouth, knowing that once the soldiers breached that position, it was over. But then something unexpected happened. A rider appeared on the northern ridge, waving a white flag. Then another. Then a dozen more. Apache warriors from tribes across the territory, drawn by news of the battle, arriving too late to prevent the defeat, but in time to turn the tide. 200 fresh fighters streamed into the valley, hitting Blake's exposed flank with devastating force. The colonel tried to regroup, but his men were exhausted from the morning's battle and psychologically unprepared for a new enemy. The fresh Apache warriors fought with fury, driving deep into the cavalry lines. Blake's formation broke. His soldiers began retreating in disorder, and the retreat turned into a rout. Swift Fox rallied his surviving warriors and joined the counterattack. Jake followed, his body screaming with pain but his spirit soaring. They chased the cavalry back across the valley, back through the positions they had fought so hard to defend, back to the valley's entrance where Blake tried desperately to form a rear guard. The colonel himself fell in the final moments, shot from his horse by an arrow from Grey Wolf's bow. With their commander down, the remaining cavalry broke completely, fleeing into the desert and leaving behind their wounded, their supplies, and their cannons. The Apaches stood victorious among the ruins of their village, having achieved the impossible. They had defeated a force 3 times their size and sent the United States cavalry running. The cost had been terrible. 30 warriors dead, including Running Deer who had died from infection 2 days before the battle. The village was destroyed. But they had survived, and they had proven they could not be easily crushed. Jake sat on a boulder, watching the sunset over the valley. Swift Fox joined him, blood-streaked and exhausted but alive. "You fought well, my brother," the Apache leader said. "You are truly one of us now." Jake nodded, too tired for words. He had started this journey seeking redemption for crimes committed 12 years ago. He did not know if he had found it, but he had found something else. Purpose. Belonging. A reason to believe that one man, even a flawed and broken man, could still stand for something right. The council met that night among the ruins. They knew more soldiers would come, better prepared and in greater numbers. They could not stay in this valley, but the victory had shown that they could fight, that they could win, that they were not beaten yet. They would scatter into the mountains, regroup, continue the struggle. Some would ride into Mexico. Others would seek peace through negotiation. Still others would fight on, carrying the battle to the army until they were all dead, or the government finally agreed to let them live in peace. Swift Fox announced his intention to continue fighting. Many warriors pledged to join him. Jake made his own decision that night. He would ride with Swift Fox and his brothers for as long as he was needed. The solitude he had sought for 12 years was gone forever, burned away in the fires of battle. He was part of something larger now, something worth dying for. As the warriors prepared to leave the valley, Singing Bird approached Jake. She pressed something into his hand, a small, carved stone marked with Apache symbols. Through Swift Fox, she explained its meaning. It was a token given to warriors who had proven themselves in battle, who had been accepted fully into the tribe. Jake closed his fingers around the stone. He had lost his ranch, his solitude, his comfortable isolation from the world. He had become an outlaw, a fugitive, a man hunted by his own people. But he had gained brothers, a cause, and a chance to be someone better than the man who had hidden from his past for 12 years. The group rode out at dawn, leaving the valley behind. Jake did not look back. His years of solitude were over. Whatever came next, whether victory or death, glory or obscurity, he would face it alongside men who had sought shelter on his land and given him something more valuable than peace. They had given him redemption through action, through sacrifice, through choosing to stand and fight for what was right even when the odds were impossible. The desert stretched ahead, vast and unforgiving, but Jake Harrison was done running. He had found his place at last, riding with Apache warriors into an uncertain future, no longer alone, no longer hiding, no longer haunted by the ghosts of his past. The 10 Apaches who had come seeking shelter had indeed ended his years of solitude, and in doing so, they had saved his soul.